Okay, so a couple of quick things before we start today. First, again, like, I'm sorry to anybody who doesn't have the book yet. Let me know if you need the chapter, and I'll make sure you get it. Right? I'll make sure you get a PDF of it. I think I have given people PDFs of up to Chapter 3.
You've emailed it out, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And yeah, generally, like, this would be skirting the, like, really skirting the edge of what's legal, right? But given the circumstances, you know, we can bend the rules a little bit here. Also, make sure that you're completing assignment 3 for Tuesday on page 114, and the usual rules apply, right? So I want you to show me your notes, and what most of you have been doing, just like taking a picture and trying to upload it, or if you email me the picture, if it won't upload to Georgia View, right? That's fine. That's all sufficient. One thing I will say: be careful about file types, because Georgia View is really finicky about file types, and apparently so is Microsoft Outlook.
That's why I didn't email you mine, because it wasn't correct.
Yeah, my email actually couldn't open those either.
It doesn't like JPEGs.
Yeah, well, JPEGs I can open in my email, right?
Okay.
So if there's a JPEG, send it to my email. Somebody sent me something that was like an HEIC file or something, and that I couldn't open. Yes?
What I had to do to get it to turn in on Georgia View is I just got an app on my phone that turns JPEGs into PDFs, because for whatever reason you can only upload PDFs.
Okay.
You just put a picture in and it'll turn it to a PDF.
Okay, and would you be willing to share with people how to do that?
The app.
All you do is get the app and then you like import the picture that you took and it makes
Okay.
a PDF that you
Oh.
can
What's
turn
the
into.
name of the app?
The one I got is just called JPEG to PDF.
Okay,
JPEG to PDF.
so just like this?
There's like a million apps. If you search it up, there should be.
Okay. But yeah, yes, okay, so since we know this one works, right? Is it free?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, great.
Then since, like, how I had to send my scratch work to you in email, if it couldn't open, do you want me to send it to you again? It's for the last assignment that was due Tuesday.
Yeah. If you could just send it to me again, just so that I can see what you're doing,
Okay.
right, with your pre-writing process. The other thing I want to say too, there are a couple of people who are already falling behind on the assignments, and you got to get caught up, right? This is a small class. There's no room for anybody to hide, right? And like, this isn't like high school where you're going to get passed along whether you do the work or not. Now, if there's some particular reason why you can't get things done, or why you're having trouble getting things done, then please just come talk to me, right? And I'll try to work something out with you. But I can't wait for the assignments indefinitely, right? Because it does you no good to turn it in at the end of the semester, since everything builds on the last assignment, right? You're expected to use the same things you did in the first assignment and the second assignment, plus, you know, one extra step, right? And so on and so forth. Also, simply because, like, as the semester gets into, you know, kicks into gear and you get busier, you're gonna have less time to go back and complete old assignments, right? So the sooner we can get this resolved and we can get people caught up, the better, right? Okay, so does anybody have any questions about anything for me? Okay, then I want to start. I kind of threw out the original script I had for today because I wanted to try something else. I've been kind of bothered recently by the way people whose political opinions differ from each other don't talk to each other, they simply yell at one another. And I think that a lot of that stems from a lack of understanding of, you know, the other person's position and where they happen to be coming from. Right? When someone disagrees with us, we respond with anger rather than with an attempt to understand. Right? Like, for example, I remember the day after the election was called last year. I saw a guy in a van pull up across the street from me. He didn't like my neighbor's yard sign, so he got out of the van. He was cursing, and he just grabbed somebody else's yard sign and broke it over his knee. Now, what would make someone think they have the right to do that, right? Or that that's an appropriate way to communicate? We see, people simply trying to shout each other down rather than having reasoned conversations about important issues. So here's what I'd like us to do. This does actually kind of dovetail with what the reading in the chapter was for today, and with what I'm going to want you guys to do on this next assignment, right? What I want you to do is think carefully about the definitions of two terms that get tossed around a lot in political rhetoric, but that we don't often, I feel like we don't actually interrogate very often. We don't often really think about what they mean, right? So these words are simply conservative and liberal, right? Now, I will also grant that there are other possible political positions, right, that don't fit cleanly into either of these two categories. But since we have a two-party system that tends to work in these kinds of binary terms, right, this is what I want us to try to think about. So I've given you these cards because what I want you to do is take, say, 5 minutes now, right? And I want you to think about which of these two descriptors you think better fits your political position, and explain what you take that term to mean, right? If you think of yourself as conservative, what do you take conservative to mean? If you think of yourself as liberal, what do you take liberal to mean? And the reason I've given you cards here, right, is so that this can be completely anonymous, so that no one feels like their particular positions are going to be singled out or attacked, right? Now, one thing that I do want everybody to do as they're doing this, right, whichever position you're describing, right, be objective, right? Avoid evaluative language, and be as specific as possible. Any questions?
Can you give a brief little description of like each word?
I was about to ask the same thing.
Okay. What kind of like what do you mean?
Like
describe what conservatism, describe what.
Okay. Are you asking me how I would describe these terms?
What? Personally, I'm asking because like I've never looked at them by those names where I don't know what you're classifying as like either in general. I've never
Okay.
looked at them as like conservative and liberal. That's just I've always like of the guys that you could say avoided the politics of a lot of stuff. So I don't know.
Okay.
What that is.
So, I don't really want to give you how I describe either of these things because I don't want to prejudge your responses, right?
What if you Googled it real quick?
If you Googled it real quick?
Oh my God,
If I
tell us
Googled
the
it.
way.
Okay, well, think of it maybe in terms of, I guess, this doesn't quite fit that cleanly either, but if you think of it in terms even maybe of political party labels, right? Would that help? If you think as one of one as a Republican position and one as a Democratic position?
Yes.
Okay.
At least that would help. I don't know about
Okay.
others in the class.
So,
but at least help me.
so which of these words do we tend to associate most frequently with Republican politics?
Conservative?
Conservative, yes. So we tend to associate the word liberal with Democratic politics and the Democratic Party, right? I would argue again, that's not an entirely clean fit in either case, but it'll do for what we're trying to do right now, right? So just think about, again, like for now, which you personally identify with, and try to explain as best you can what you think that means, right? What you think that position is. And I will do the same.
With the evaluating language, is that like when we were talking about like the room and that stuff and saying that it was like a simple room, is that the kind of words you're telling us to avoid?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like words that show how you feel about something rather than that describe something.
Are we
Right?
putting our names on these?
You are not putting your name on it. Nope. The whole point is for this to be anonymous. take one more minute, those of you who are still finishing up. Okay, time's up. All right, so what I would like you to do now is flip the card I gave you over. And I want you to choose the other political position and describe what you think someone who adopts that political position believes, right? Now, here's the kicker. Again, I want you to avoid evaluative language, right? And I want you to try to do so in a way that someone who adopts that opposite position would think is fair, right? So what you're trying to do is inhabit the mindset of someone who has different politics from yours, right? And you're trying to explain what you think they believe in a way they would consider fair, right? Does that make sense to you? Yes.
What if I kind of did that with the front side? With talking about the one, but also putting in the other side's belief in like the comparison between the two.
Then just try to pull out that other side and make sure that you're doing it in a neutral and balanced way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So just try to develop then what you wrote on the other side.
I say I was talking about both and their
Mhm.
both sides' beliefs on different stuff. So it was very separated.
take one more minute, everybody. Okay, so if you could pass the cards up, remember, don't put your names on them, right? This is entirely anonymous. No one is going to know who wrote what apart from you, right? You'll know what you wrote. Okay. And I'll start by sharing the way I defined both of these, right? And keep in mind, right, that I am trying to be as neutral and balanced as possible, right? Not favoring one side or the other. And that I am using definitions that I have gleaned from reading a lot of political theory and things like that, right? Okay. So, we'll start with conservative, right? So the way I defined this, right, is that a conservative believes that social change should be gradual. That tax laws should encourage investment. That regulation of business harms economic growth. Traditional social hierarchy should be respected. That government's role should be limited primarily to defense and infrastructure. Private property should be respected. And that personal freedom is more important than the public interest. So does this sound more or less balanced, reasonable, and fair? Yeah, I've avoided, or at least tried to avoid, any kind of language here that suggests what I think of any of these ideas, right? And does this look like a pretty reasonable description of most of the beliefs of contemporary American conservatives? Okay, so let's see now what you all added here. Okay. All right, so it looks like some of you have done this in ways that I may have to try to infer. So let's start with those that look a little easier. Okay. So here I've got conservatives are traditionalists with generally religious backgrounds, any religion. They may have more traditional social standards and are more concerned with regulating certain aspects of social life. Okay, so the definition that this person focused on was largely what we would call social conservatism, right? They're not really talking much here about economics, but is the way they represent conservative social views fairly consistent with what we've got here?
Were we supposed to be talking about economics, or was it just as what we think of when we think of the word?
You could, yeah, you could have talked about either aspect. Yeah, there was nothing necessarily you were supposed to talk about, right? The one thing I was trying to get each of you to do, and some of you kind of hedged a little bit too much on this, was to come up with a clear definition of what these terms mean, right? So that was the basic purpose of this. Okay. So here I've got conserving America this way this nation was designed to be and always worked in some form or another, other than trying to change the nation into a way that it was not in the past. Okay, so how might we actually kind of reframe that to make it a little bit less evaluative?
You said that very fast.
Okay. Conserving America the way this nation was designed to be and always worked in some form or another, other than trying to change the nation into a way that it was not in the past.
Constitutionalism.
Okay, yeah, constitutionalism, past as value, right? Founding principles, maybe. Respect for founding principles. And again, I'm not trying to take the wind out of anybody's sails here, right? What I am trying to do is just try to come up with balanced and respectful definitions, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Factoring in a what if something new does not work, or at least not as well as something new was hoped to work. For example, a family staying around its roots of where it started and was well off, instead of the risk of branching out somewhere new that ends up not working out. Okay, so that's sort of continuing along the same lines, right? All right. Conservative. They are often more religion-based in their beliefs. They don't commonly discriminate color or sex, but liberals believe that... Okay, so remember, this wasn't about what you think the other side believes about them, right? You're just trying to define it for yourself. Conservatives are commonly pro-life instead of pro-choice, which is also a religious political view. Okay, so respect for religion is also a part of this, right? Right, more likely to be religious, perhaps. They are also for guns, law enforcement, and like liberals, try to do what they think is best. Okay, so right, we've got kind of both kind of mixing in here. Conservatives are more likely, it says here, also to be pro-life is the word used here. I actually want to interrogate the terms pro-life and pro-choice in a minute, because I think that they're both actually a little bit deceptive. All right, and let's look at this one here as well. So conservatives are traditionalists, which, oh wait, I already read that. Never mind. Okay. Okay, so this is how I define liberal, and then we'll see, what the rest of you came up with, right? Taxation should encourage redistribution of wealth from haves to have-nots. personal liberties, particularly free speech and bodily autonomy, are important when they do not infringe on the public good. That historic injustices should be corrected. Public good outweighs private profit. Business must be regulated. To protect the public interest, particularly as regards things like income equality and the environment. That wealth and power should not be concentrated in a small portion of the population. Right, this being related to the whole idea that taxation should redistribute wealth, right? And that equity and inclusion are desirable social goals. Now, again, I've tried to be as fair and neutral here as possible. It is often hard to be fair and neutral when talking about politics, right? Especially because this is something that gets people really heated up. And, I can already see that, some of you are kind of reading what I've got here, and a couple of you are making slightly angry faces. And yeah, I'll admit, right, yeah, this is how a self-identified left liberal views what I believe, right? This is essentially how I believe society should work, right? And, I have no problem saying, that this is basically what I believe. It doesn't mean I won't respect what you believe, right? In fact, I've tried to be respectful of what you believe and to kind of figure that out as best I can. So let's see what else y'all came up with here. Okay. So I think being liberal means minding your own business and not forcing a certain solution as the only answer to certain questions. I also think it means being accepting of one another and respecting differences. What you do with your own life has nothing to do with me, and I shouldn't make my opinion on your private life known. Okay, so there's respect here for personal privacy, if not necessarily for private property, right? Okay. Liberal. With great risk comes great reward. A change in economy, policies, laws, and ideals could result in a better nation. We don't know unless we try. There's the possibility of things being even better. So what we do see here in this is a greater level of comfort with change, right? Liberals have different views. Their views are not as religion-based, and they push for rights with force. Okay, so more secular, right? As opposed to more religious. One example is pro-choice. They've been pushing a long time. Other examples are Black Lives Matter, women's rights, and LGBTQ+. They do marches and protests, peaceful and violent, to get their point across. Now, are marches and protests exclusively something liberals do, though? No, this is something that both sides do, right? So, I'm generally not in favor of whataboutism, right? Or, both sides do it, so whatever, right? But one thing we have to acknowledge is that when there are certain tactics that both groups use, right, then we have to be willing to acknowledge that, yes, both do, right? They are also into getting rid of guns and defunding police because of their view of racism. Okay, so and I think we can connect this to the view about rather than letting society go and change gradually, right? There is a feeling that historic injustices perpetrated on particular groups need to be corrected by government action, right? Okay. So, do we actually see here, and I guess one thing we can also put in here, like somebody put on the corner of theirs, that liberals tend to be pro-choice. Now, does anybody notice anything weird about the labels pro-life and pro-choice? Do we acknowledge that these are two sides of a binary? That these are things that we tend to regard as opposite positions? So then what's weird about the way we phrase them?
Probably makes it seem like they're more humane.
Okay, although pro-choice also sounds fairly humane too, right? Like these are both things people like, right? People are generally in favor of life. People are generally in favor of choice, right? Brandon, you had a hand up. What were you going to say?
I was going to say to make their side both seem positive, they use pro instead of saying like not
So,
like
yeah,
or
like
not
pros and
choice.
cons.
Yeah, generally you expect the opposite of a pro-something to be an anti-something, right? But in this case, they're both pro-something, right? And they're both pro-something nice.
Well, I wonder if the reason like they're pro something nice is because to the two different, like to people who think of one over the other, in their opinion, the the positive is their side instead of the other, so you couldn't say the other one was
Okay, yeah, on the one hand, yeah, if you're looking at it from the inside of either group, then yeah, you are pro-something, right? You are in favor of choice. You're in favor of bodily autonomy, right? You're in favor of life. You're in favor of protecting, protecting the unborn, right? But yeah, so there may be a level of sincerity involved in like both of these labels, right? But there is also a little bit of rhetorical sleight of hand going on in both of them, right? The pro makes them both sound positive, right? People are more likely to go along with something that sounds positive, right? And they're both pro something that people generally think is good. So what's completely avoided in both of these labels? Yeah, Brandon.
The negative outcome.
Okay, negative outcomes of either, right?
or the negative side of either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no... Do either of these... What were you going to say, Chris? Were you saying
What was I gonna say?
saying the same thing? Okay, he just had his hand up first.
Yeah.
Okay. What are these two positions actually about?
Abortion.
Yeah, but neither of them actually mentions it, right? They're both about abortion rights, but neither of these labels actually comes out and says, I am anti-abortion rights or I am pro-abortion rights, right? Why do you think that is? Why do you think that both sides go to so much trouble to not mention the thing they're actually arguing about? Yeah, Brandon.
Not like everybody in either side agrees or disagrees with abortion itself. It's more like the life part of the choice part.
Instead
Yeah.
of like the conservative side, it's like the religious view of like life and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Where maybe like at least for that side, and then with the liberal side, it kind of like making it so it's like that you can either be pro this or pro that, so they kind of just followed suit.
So okay, so right, we got the religious viewpoint that life it begins at conception, and that is kind of what that what the pro-life reference is. Okay, so yeah, there is like a root in religious thinking that comes from. And again, the choice notion, acknowledging that, maybe not all people who adopt the pro-choice position are actually in favor of abortion rights themselves, right? Or in favor of abortion themselves, right? But are still in favor of the right to have one, right? Whether or not they actually agree with the process itself, right?
So like whether or not they would do it to like.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But the sort of like, I wouldn't do it, but I wouldn't stop you from doing it, right? So yeah, so we can find like the philosophical roots of both of these, right? But I think there is also another perhaps more practical reason why neither of them actually mentions the thing that they're really arguing about. Nobody really likes to talk about this, right?
Sensitive topic.
Yeah, exactly. So by couching it in these more positive words, right, you avoid the kind of sensitive, unpleasant topic that you would otherwise have to deal with if both of these terms were, let's say, like a little bit more semantically honest, right? So here's what I'd like us to try to do now, right? Let's take these lists that we've made of what it means to be conservative and what it means to be liberal, right? Again, from self-identified liberals and conservatives and kind of like the way that we understand these two terms, right? And what I want you to do is look for two things, right? I want you to look for what you think the biggest and most important difference is between the two, right? And this is probably something that is going to be more thematic than like a single line here, right? Look for a particular area of life that they're referring to where you think there's a huge gap, right? A big difference. And then the second thing I want you to do is find an unexpected similarity, right? I want you to find between these two positions some place where there is common ground, right? Some place where there is maybe a similarity you didn't expect to see. So sit with it, take your time, and we'll just see where this goes. Just take a couple minutes, go slow, and when you think you've got something, go ahead and speak up. Yeah, Brian, that was quick.
The main difference is like financial status.
Okay, how so?
Most problems are like exact differences for both have to do with either losing or gaining money financially. Like the tax laws
Okay.
should encourage investment, and taxation should encourage redistribution. Or the regulation of businesses, and then businesses should be regulated or like similar.
Okay, yeah, so you're saying there's a difference in how both sides think wealth should be created and regulated, right? Okay, yeah, good. Yeah, Chris.
I put the regulation of businesses differently, since businesses, like good businesses, a lot of what runs a country, so like that both of them think that businesses should be regulated differently, I thought was like the biggest difference.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, we can kind of maybe put this
Yeah.
as a kind of corollary to what Brandon said, right? Is that differences over the extent to which business should be regulated, right? And yeah, there are conservative arguments typically that any regulation tends to harm economic growth, right? And there are also liberal arguments that regulation can be good for economic growth, right? We won't get too deeply into those. Yeah, Haley.
So I kind of have one for differences, and then I have a big, another one for like where there's similarity.
Okay, let's just focus on differences for now, and then we'll get to the similarity in a minute.
With the differences, another would. Oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. Hold on. Let me refine where I was going with it. Change and the speed of change.
Okay. Attitudes towards change and how fast it should happen, sure, right? Yeah, whereas the liberal position is that if something needs to be changed, then government has the right and should step in to change it, right? Whereas the conservative position tends to be that change should be allowed to happen more organically from the ground up, right? Yeah, good. Okay, yeah, James.
I said the biggest difference is the government's role
Okay. How so?
in all aspects of life.
All right. The conservative position argues in general for a more limited role for government, right? Whereas the liberal position argues for fairly robust government intervention in everything but people's private lives, right? Okay, good. What else? Any other significant differences here that y'all see?
Ideas on public interest and public.
Okay. Public versus private, right? Yeah, which side tends to favor the public interest? Yeah, liberals tend to be more interested in what's good for the public, right? What's good for everybody. And conservatives are often more concerned with what's good for the individual, right? Okay, good. Yeah, what were you going to say, Chris? Oh, I thought you had a hand up, sorry.
I was probably like scratching my head or something.
Okay, it happens. Sometimes we get itchy. All right, anything else that y'all want to point out? Okay, so yeah, you guys are doing great with this, by the way. It's like, one thing I hope this is demonstrating is that if you kind of understand the position another person is coming from, right, and what their set of values is, then I hope like that doesn't make them look like a villain to you, right? That, well-meaning people can differ on ends and the ways to get there, right? And that the only way we can bridge any kind of gaps here is to talk to each other. Now, along those lines, where do we see similarity, if any? Like, do these look like two camps that are completely balkanized, absolutely, and can find no common ground? Yeah, Haley.
Well, one that stood out with like just in the two sides that you've written was the personal privacy being important, and like the liberal side, and the private property should be respected kind of relates to each other and hurt people's like personal
Yeah.
privacy.
that even if it's not exactly the same, right, there is on both sides a general respect for personal privacy. Yeah. Okay.
And personal freedom.
Yeah, maybe not exactly the same personal freedoms, right?
But they still both have like personal freedoms.
Yeah, they may be defining freedom in slightly different ways, right? But they are both concerned with personal freedom, right? What I think of as freedom may not be exactly the same thing you think of as freedom, right? But it's a value that we both cherish. Okay, good. What else? Any other similarities you see? Yeah, Chris.
I put change for my similarity because even though like conservatism were like slower with change,
Okay.
there's still change on both sides. It's
Yeah.
just, speed's the only thing that's different.
Yeah, the change is inevitable, right? It's just the speed of change.
That makes it different.
That's the big point of disagreement. Yeah, okay, good. What else? Anything else you guys see here that's similar?
Taxation.
Okay, that they're both concerned with taxation, yeah. Though they don't agree on what it's supposed to do, right? Or how it should work.
Maybe founding principles.
I was
Okay.
thinking towards that too.
Okay, how so, James? Yeah, explain the reasoning.
Some liberals, they want to interpret the Constitution in modern standards. So they like the
Okay.
Constitution, but they want to interpret it a more looser interpretation.
Okay, see, I think what you're talking about here is what, I don't know, how many of you are taking Intro to Political Science right now? Or Intro to American Government? Okay, you are. Who are you taking it with? Is it the short guy with black hair or the tall guy with a ponytail? Or is it neither and is the bald guy?
He's sorry,
Okay, John Lejeune, does that ring a bell?
no.
No, it doesn't? Okay. All right. So I'm guessing that when y'all leave this classroom, y'all forgetting who I am too, right? Okay, so if you're taking, so Brandon, have you talked about the difference between strict constructionism and loose constructionism in that class? It's pretty early yet, so maybe not, but.
I have American Government. I don't think that we have. And if we have, it was because of like we were on a main topic and then you might have like thrown it in a little bit.
Okay.
As a subject.
Okay, you haven't really gone into detail about it. Okay, and we're not going to go into deep detail about it either, right? But essentially, conservatives adopt what's called a strict constructionist view of the Constitution, right? So a strict constructionist believes that the Constitution, as written, is the law of the land that should be followed, right? That there's no need to update the Constitution or to interpret the Constitution in light of contemporary social changes, right? A loose constructionist, on the other hand, believes that the Constitution is an important framework for a legal system, but that because it was written in the late 18th century and society has changed a lot since then we have to reinterpret certain elements of the Constitution to better suit contemporary issues and values, right? So, I'm not trying to start a fight with anybody about this, right? I'm just using this as an example. One example being interpretation of the Second Amendment, right? Which actually has evolved over time, for one thing. But was also written when the most advanced firearm on the market was a flintlock rifle that took about 7 minutes to load, right? So so some loose constructionists might argue that because firearms technology has changed, then the law needs to be rethought. because weapons of today are deadlier than weapons of the past. And even strict constructionists have changed the way they read the Second Amendment over time as well, right? Does anybody know exactly what the text of the Second Amendment is, how it reads?
Right to bear arms.
There's more than one.
There is, yeah.
It's just what everybody sees it as.
Yeah. That's the way it's usually interpreted, right? At least today.
Oh,
We used to know that part word for word.
Yeah, a well-regulated militia being necessary preserving the public peace or something like that, right? The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So judges and lawyers used to put the weight on the well-regulated militia part, right? And they used to believe that that was the more important clause. And so they believed that the government thus did have the right to limit private right to bear arms in some way, right? Now, starting in the 70s, they began reinterpreting that and putting the weight on the right to bear arms part. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. So, where a lot of the argument over the right to bear arms comes from is the rather confusing way in which the amendment is worded, right? So even for a strict constructionist, someone who adheres strictly to the text of the Constitution, it's not an easy problem to sort out. Whether the important part is not infringing the right to bear arms, or the important part is the well-regulated militia part, which, because we don't have we don't have official militias anymore, like, what do we do?
I don't even know what that means.
A well-regulated militia?
Yeah, isn't that like, there's no militia, like a small army, like every town had its own, like, militia.
Yeah, yes, a militia is more like a kind of ad hoc town guard than an official army,
So
right?
like every town had like its little like guard unit or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, if every town had its militia that would be called up, in times of danger, right? So, we also see this sometimes in countries that require military service, right? That at least up to a certain age, in Switzerland, for example, men are required to own a gun, right? But then once they're past the age of their military service, the gun is decommissioned, taken apart, and given back, right? Anyway, everybody gets the point here, right? And this is essentially what I want y'all to do for assignment 3 on page 114, right? You're not going to be picking apart these two specific terms, right? You're going to choose from this list of potential topics on page 114.
And then we explain both sides basically.
Yeah, you're going to compare the two things, right? You're going to outline the differences in your scratch work. You're going to outline the similarities, and then you're going to find what you think is either the most important and significant difference. Important and significant is redundant. Those mean more or less the same thing. Or the most meaningful, unexpected similarity, right? And you're going to try to analyze either that important difference or that important similarity. Right?
So we don't have to do both like we did here. We just pick a similarity or
Yeah,
difference I think is like important.
Yeah, I would say, try to outline both in your scratch work, right? And think through both.
Yeah,
But when you're doing the writing, when you're actually sitting down doing the writing, just focus on one.
So we do like that middle section first and then pick one of those basically. Alright.
Exactly. That is exactly the process I'm asking you to follow. All right. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, great. So everybody, have yourselves a good weekend. Stay safe. I hope we all get some rest, and we'll see you on Tuesday.